I'm glad to have you on. And, there's a lot going on. So this call, I think we're going to kind of run through lots of things, catch up on what we have. Okay, so here's the agenda. So we'll do a quick one on the federal funding update. We've got a bunch of new groups that have joined NHRC. Always really happy to have them. White House meeting, big deal. I think we've got good opportunities here, and we also use the opportunity to do a meeting with housing counselors and FHFA to try to get our recognition up, and we'll talk a little bit about that and what we're hearing directly and indirectly about the role of housing counseling. We've got the MBA Realtors Initiative, which is beginning to get some traction out there, and thanks for all the interest that people have expressed. That's very exciting. A short thing on sustainability for housing counseling program, but the idea is to set up conversations in the future that might be useful to agencies around the country about what works in terms of sustainable programming. Kind of a plea for let's elevate some of these, give you some recognition, and get us more models. And this is part of the Innovations in Housing Counseling series. Shaping the post-HAMP world. So this is next steps in what might replace HAMP, and there's a new MBA proposal out. We'll at least touch on the high points. And then the very popular Hillary Clinton student loan proposal. We don't know a ton about it, but as you saw on the email list, there are lots and lots of interest. So I'm going to pause here for a moment and just say what I think several people have said, which is, after 2 or 3 comments, there is really, you shouldn't hit reply all. You can just send it to me or to Matthew or both of us. But it does fill up people's inboxes very quickly. Some of you really, really hate that. Some people are fine with it, and I get that. But I end up fielding a bunch of complaints, and sometimes people pull off the list, or sometimes people want to flip over to the headlines list, which is okay. So headlines list is the one where there's no ability to reply, so you only get emails from Matthew and me. And you can do that. It's a bit of a pain for us to switch them through somehow. It's very easy by Google to add people, but hard to take them off and pop them into another one. But so the short of it is, unless you've got something really substantive to say that's got really changes the conversation in big ways, emails that's sort of saying that you'd like to participate or that you agree, we shouldn't do those as reply all. I'm very interested in what people have to say, and this kind of back and forth is very helpful for me. And definitely this, I really put this question out as one I was trying to figure out, and shows that there's a ton of interest here. So we will keep thinking about it. But please use the reply all reluctantly once anything's gotten started. And then very shortly on working with people with disabilities, I think it's a bigger issue, but we're not getting much response on this question, so wanted to just check in about it. And plug to join NHRC. We're doing really great work. We will do our best to get you into some meetings and get you special attention, but the real reason to join is to support the work, which many of you do, and we really appreciate that a lot and could use a few more, and hopefully your organization is one of those. So let's dive right in. So Matthew, let's federal funding update.
Yep, so not a whole lot to report from the call 2 weeks ago, I think it was. The kind of big question mark right now is when, so the bill has been passed by the full Senate and is out of the House Appropriations Committee. So the big question is, when is it going to come up on the House floor? We don't have an answer to that question at the moment. We think we'll know more in the next week or maybe 2 weeks. But it's worth noting that there are relatively few legislative days left prior to the end of the fiscal year. So there's a few days left in July, but then they take a long summer recess. We'll be gone for all of August, and I believe even the first week of September. So then they come back, and there's only 3 weeks, and even fewer than that in terms of legislative days before the fiscal year ends at the end of September. So it could come up, in which case they would create a conference committee, and the House and Senate would basically have to hammer out that the difference in the HUD housing counseling assistance, the 55 and 47 $million. Or it could be that they end up doing a continuing resolution, which would have to go through till after the election. So that's kind of where we are. We're just waiting to see whether the THUD bill is going to come up on the House. I'm also, as an aside, going to mention and apologize for our next agenda item. I did not create a slide for. I realized as Bruce was running through the agenda, so apologies for that.
Oh no. Okay. Well, thank you, Matthew, and thank you for being on top of this. Obviously, very important to us, and we will monitor this closely. We are also thinking a lot about what to do for the next administration and how housing counseling might be positioned, and particularly home ownership and loss mitigation issues. So stay tuned for more on that as the campaign and the year progresses, but we will. It's all part of what we're working on. So my big moment here was to welcome the new members to NHRC, and so I'll read them out here, and we'll do triumphant trumpet sounds and drum beats and that sort of thing to support this. But really appreciate groups joining, and especially new groups joining the fold. So Empire Justice Center out of New York, Tarrant County Housing Partnership from Texas. Tarrant County's been involved in the Google ad campaign. We really appreciate that a lot. Residential Resources in Tennessee, NeighborWorks Blackhawk region, which is out of Wisconsin. HAP Housing, major player in Massachusetts. I think Repco up in New York, and deeply involved in HomeSmart in New York and many other initiatives. And a quick mention that Empire Justice Center will have Ellie Pepper joining us in a few moments to talk about the White House meeting and the FHFA meeting we had recently. But please consider joining NHRC, getting in on the fight. We've got it strengthens us to have more members, gives us a little bit of more financial flexibility, but the main thing is you're supporting the cause. So let's move on. White House meeting. Okay, so, and we're also going to talk about the FHFA meeting. Oh, nice picture up there. Very happy looking Sarah Jarek. I think she was very pleased with it, which I think is great. She does do a lot of great work with us. So, is Ellie Pepper with us? Have we clicked her in? So, I'm looking over at Matthew here.
Ellie, I think you've got yourself muted. So
I'll keep talking.
Hopefully you can hear us, but I can't unmute you at the moment, Ellie.
So speak up when
you've got her now.
Oh, good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yay.
Okay, so Ellie Pepper from Empire Justice Center, and also a member of the Federal Advisory Board for Housing Counseling. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Good. And we understand that you had your first meeting. Is there anything you want to say about that first before we dive into the White House meeting and FHFA?
Well, the only thing I'll say is it was strictly an orientation, so there was no work of the committee that was done. But you know, it was really great to get to meet everybody, and Bruce and Matthew had organized a wonderful reception the night before, so some of us got to meet each other even before the orientation. And it seems like a great group. Like we really gelled together very well, and I think that Sarah is really excited about it, and our very first actual working meeting will happen sometime in August or September.
Oh, so coming up soon. That's good. That's
Yeah.
great. And we'll love to hear how that goes. I was also impressed about how kind of enthusiastic and creative the group was that we got to meet with beforehand, and that so we can expect good things to come from. So we had a very interesting couple days there. Why don't we start with the White House meeting, because I think that got the most attention. So what were your impressions, Ellie?
Well, my impressions were that it was the homeowners and the housing counselors that spoke were just so impactful. It was really great to hear some personal stories from the homeowners, and then to also hear the housing counselors talk about their experience. It was great that the HUD Secretary Castro was there and, really spoke pretty, at length about the benefits of housing counseling and helping owners. Ed Golding, the director of FHA, was there. So it was great that, some pretty significant people were out and praising housing counseling, and so it was an exciting morning.
Yeah, very interesting. So one thing I will mention that I'm not sure has gotten wide publicity, but so this is they said this to me privately beforehand, but then actually said it openly in the meeting as well. This is the first White House Homeownership Month event. So 7 years into the administration, and this is the first one that they actually did, which I think speaks to as much progress as we've made with this administration. Homeownership has not been the focus in it, and I think they put it down as there wasn't a lot good to say, but in fact I think in a lot of ways that's kind of why you want to do these kind of events, to get people thinking about it and pull together the resources and materials to do it. And it does trigger in my mind that how important it's going to be for the next administration if we can really emphasize the need for a home ownership strategy. And there's precedent in previous administrations for this that I think one of the wonderful presences was from the people from Hawaii, who traveled the furthest and brought leis for some of us. And so you'll see a lei on both the woman on the right and Sarah Jarek on the left. And they brought their own kind of Hawaiian hospitality and generosity, both to the reception and the meeting. Yeah, I really did think, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say I thought that one of the aspects of the couple from Hawaii that I found most intriguing and again impactful was that he used to actually be part of a construction company that built homes for other people, but he had never been able to own a home himself. So this was really meaningful for him.
Yeah, right. And then and the panel, I should have these names in front of me and I don't, but the woman second from the right was with the Nevada Labor Council. I think it was like bartenders and roles like that, service workers, waitresses, those kind of jobs. And they had put together an initiative to help people buy houses in Las Vegas. And a terrific kind of creative and less typical partnership to encourage housing counseling. So very, very good. From CAF, gentleman in the middle was a minister and spoke in Spanish, and Walkira Poole, the director, did the translations from the audience. That was very good. And the next woman over was from Indianapolis and was a millennial, and then and talked about not only how she was able to purchase, but then other relatives. She was the first in our family to own a house, and then other relatives, uncles and aunts, were purchased after her, which also was the kind of real value of modeling all this. And then the gentleman in the uniform was an active duty military person who came through in Maine with CEI and did a kind of very powerful talk. At the reception, he actually talked quite passionately about this, and then kind of read a statement at the meeting about the whole responsibilities of being in the military and being able to purchase when you don't, when you're under the constraints of having active duty service responsibilities. So very interesting kind of things. I think it was deeply meaningful for Sarah Jarik, which is, I think, nice, given how hard she works for us, and was thrilled to see that it was a kind of positive event for her as well. And I think sort of where this goes from here, one of the pieces that we had really hoped was a goal of this meeting was to get the word out about housing counseling, to use the walls, the White House as a springboard for, or a bully pulpit to get the word out. And I'm not sure that we accomplished that as well as we might have, and I think we need to learn from that and do it better next time. There was a media packet that HUD was preparing, or I guess in conjunction with the White House. I'm not sure where that's at right now, but it wasn't available pre-event, and media was not invited to the event itself, but the idea was that they could watch it being streamed. My sense is that it didn't, that there wasn't as much thought that ended up going into the event on that part as other pieces. I will say that the other piece of value that was really very, very clear was how important and validating it was for counselors to see this event happen. That I appreciated the comments many of you sent to me about this, and I also appreciated that when people were in the room, how valuable it was, how people took photographs and really took photographs of themselves and their group, and were able to post this on social media and in their media sources. All those things, I think, help get the word out a little bit more, and I think also are a tribute to the work. So this was clearly a valuable benefit that I had not anticipated, but really meant a lot to a lot of people. And, it was great to learn that.
Bruce, if I could just jump in
Sure.
quickly. So there was a question that I think I'll kind of address quickly, but then there's a question for you and Ellie. So just to kind of clarify, it wasn't like a policy discussion. The event was what Bruce and Ellie just described, where it was really to celebrate the homeowners and the counselors, and to celebrate counseling, but it wasn't really a discussion where we were trying to work things out. But the question for Bruce and Ellie is if you had any high-level takeaways from the meeting.
So Ellie, do you have some?
Well, I think that, what comes to mind from some of the things that you were talking about, Bruce, is to, I think that it took a lot of work to get this level of acknowledgement, this kind of public acknowledgement, even though there maybe wasn't some media involved and some other things that could have happened. But I think it was a really great first step, and that going forward, we can use this as an example of how beneficial something like this can be, and offer what might be things that could work even better in the interest of, of the program and of the White House in advertising something like this for next year and in intervening years.
Yep. No, I think we're already beginning to think about what those might look like. And I think we, next time, we should try to couple it up with some kind of an announcement that makes it a newsworthy announcement, so more than just a celebration. And that would then make it more of a media event and help socialize what we do.
I want to comment on one other thing that might be nice for the housing counselors to hear, but Sarah mentioned how quickly housing counseling agencies across the country responded to the request for stories and people who could come to DC, and that in spite of the fact that people were given relatively short notice, that the response was overwhelming, and she was very appreciative of that, and used it as an example of how responsive housing counseling agencies across the country are.
Yeah, that was a very nice moment, and a couple things to add to that. One was that we had, I didn't actually count how many nominations we had, but a lot of people responded with great cases, and I looked at all of them, and they were terrific. I mean, they were just really on point and helpful and clearly great examples of our work. I'm not quite sure where they arrived at the numbers. They were only going to nominate 12 or 13, but they did, and there was some geographic distribution. There was some wanting to be sure there was an active military person, that there was an FHA loan, that there were these different criteria. So lots of good stories didn't make it through the mill, and I think we do not feel bad about it. It was your stories got reviewed by Sarah, by Ruth Roman, by what's her name, Sharon McLean. So you got high-level HUD housing counseling people looking at the stories, appreciating the groups that really scrambled to get stuff up there. So this was a good thing, even if not everybody got nominations. The one other follow-up is that it would be fine to do some kind of local announcement, and HUD's plan was to give that information to the regional directors in each of the HUD regions. There's like 12 of them, I think. And you could reach out to them, and if you've got a nominee, or even if it's somebody who wasn't selected but was nominated and considered, and see if they want to do a joint event with you, if you want to bring in a mayor or something like that, or do a joint release. It's something that gets a little bit more publicity legs out there. That would be a good extra step to help circulate the ideas and get the word out about us. But we'll think about more events and more things to kind of socialize housing counseling more. Good. I'm going to push us on a little bit because we have a long agenda. So quickly just on FHFA. So since we had many leading thinkers in the housing counseling world coming in for the events, we did pull together a meeting with FHFA. Part of it was this concern that there's lots of discussions happening about what will replace HAMP, and also about how to improve performance on how to improve the number of mortgages that are getting written, especially in communities of color and in low and moderate income communities. But that housing counseling is often seen as a big plus, but not really part of the policy program discussion and planning. So the idea was, so there's been a number of meetings with FHFA to kind of inform them about this. I thought now's the time to really do it again, and do it in a way that says, you know, we're ready to do these things. And we had Sandra Thompson and Maria Fernandez and Bill Merrill from FHFA, along with a number of other people. Fannie and Freddie were both there, and it was a very good discussion. I'm not going to remember everybody in the room on our side, but Judy Hunter, Ellie, Lot Diaz, Simone Griffin, a whole bunch more actually. But the idea was that we really start putting this out as a successful program that needs to get built in more routinely, and business and funding be part of it as well. I'm very clear about the NFMC funding going away. I thought Fannie and Freddie, especially Fannie, was very engaged in the conversation, very interested in what this might look like. We gave recognition to Fannie for $500 per counseled loan as as an important model, and people red flagged that that should be $500 plus whatever the local lender's paying as well, rather than that money being deducted from it, so we have more accumulated money going in for each deal. I think those things kind of resonated with people. So Ellie, do you have some impressions or things you want to throw in there?
Yeah, I was really encouraged by the fact that they were really engaged. You know, the Fannie and Freddie folks and FHFA folks were really engaged in the conversation and really seemed to be on board with trying to figure out how to really integrate housing counseling into the mortgage application process, and also how to help housing counseling be sustainable funding-wise. And so there was some talk about, you know, fee-for-service items, some incentives around percentage points, which Fannie has one product like that right now that Wells Fargo, I think, spoke about on a recent leaders call. There was talk about maybe putting together some kind of focus group to figure out how to message better around housing counseling, and that old conversation about what else to call it besides housing counseling kind of came up, and that's where this you know, focus group kind of discussion kind of came from. There was a conversation about what needs to be presented to lenders is housing counseling is worth X, and it will cost Y, and how is it that that benefits the lender? What's the benefit to the lender if we calculate what the cost benefit is, and how does it save the lender money? There was some talk about counseled borrowers being in the pool that's sold into the secondary market and how that mitigates risk. Some things got a little bit above my head around talking about all of that stuff, I will admit, but it did also sound exciting to think about that housing counseling could be considered you know, a mitigating factor in the risk pool for mortgages and the way that they're sold on the secondary market. So those were the big things, and so there were some people there from NeighborWorks. Karen Hoskins was there, and they are working on a study that they're going to release in the fall. So I'm looking forward to that. They're working with the Urban Institute on a study for housing counseling. So there's a lot of that coming out because, you know, HUD just released their preliminary findings on the demonstration project that they've been working on for housing counseling. So this is great. All of this is coming out now, and it's, you know, following on the heels of this White House meeting, and so it's exciting.
Yeah, and we are beginning to hear a little bit from other people that there's a deeper awareness in the industry about the fact that the NFMC funding is going away, and as a result, we are going to continue to press on those issues. And on FHFA, I think the follow-up here is that this is absolutely going to be an ongoing conversation, and the Coalition of HUD Intermediaries does their thing on this issue as well, and we'll have hopefully continue to press to get much deeper integration in the upcoming year, but this will definitely be an ongoing conversation. So one of the other things that came out of this couple-day marathon was
Bruce, I'm sorry, I'm just going to jump in quickly. Going back to the White House event, Lindsey Burns just wanted to make sure everyone knew that HUD yesterday had released the Homeownership Month Toolkit. So that has highlights from the events and talking points, success stories. So I think that's the kind of media outreach piece.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Lindsey. So, and Lindsey got a shout out at the White House meeting for she was one of the people that recruited through the coalition, and is at HPN for recruiting nominees, and that was all very helpful as well. But thank you for that, Lindsey. Good. So one of the things we've got in front of us is that we were trying to think of how to build on the White House event and had reached out to the MBA and the realtors to do events that would happen out in the field. So rather than having DC-centric things, what could we do in the field that would help build the counseling work? And from my perspective on all this, it was the idea was that we would go, we'd have the MBA and realtors put together events with housing counseling agencies where you'd put together a plan for how to improve getting more people to housing counseling and increase the home ownership pool. And, you know, while I generally like to make very specific plans, the idea with this was, let's see what the local areas would come up with and make a plan that might, maybe it's a home buyer event, but maybe it's a whole pipeline and training program to get real estate agents to think differently about housing counseling. Or maybe it's work to work with major employers in the field to get their employees to look at home ownership and or maybe working with local unions, or I don't know what it is. I mean, whatever kind of works in the local field. But the idea was the MBA embraced the idea of doing 4 events. I came in with a longer list, as I often do, but I thought if they were willing to commit resources, that was great. I think there's some initial interest in Cleveland as a place to kick off, but they're interested in places where they have MBA state chapters that are strong. But an interesting thing has surfaced from all this, which is some localities have also on their own said, well, we'll do this and we'll do this on our own. And we would love to be made aware of that stuff and be in the conversation a little bit on this to be helpful. But again, why not have local groups do it on their own, because you'll figure out what the best solutions are. One of the products of this will be that next homeownership month in June 2017, we're planning on having a larger meeting of stakeholders, and part of that goal of that meeting will be to say, well, this is what worked well, and hey, this didn't work quite as well, so next time we know better. I'm hoping that there's enough success and momentum that we'll be able to do more localities in the following year. But also I think we should try to think about how that fits into what might be a national homeownership strategy and other things with the administration. So to try to think of this as a year-long initiative, and certainly what happens with local areas, even if you're not one of the 4 cities, but you do something, let's see if we can't get that integrated into this as well, and get those lessons learned and recognition for the work that the groups are doing. But again, part of the idea behind all this is practical ways that we'll get more people into housing counseling with local groups doing the kind of local work that you do best. Really appreciate the fact that lots of people have been interested in this, and we will talk about it more as we learn more. I don't think there'll be any meetings before the fall, and I bet the bulk of them will be in 2017. Good. So let's move on. And so this is a quickie here. I know sustainability is a critical issue for everybody. We've been thinking a lot about, well, what do we do now that the core funding for loss mitigation is going away, and how do we think about housing counseling going forward? And so really what I'm doing here is making a pitch for if you've got projects that are financially sustainable, that are outside of the typical things housing counseling agencies do, and you'd like to be part of the Innovations in Housing Counseling series, please let me know and just shoot me an email. We are going to feature more groups out during the course of the year on these innovations in housing counseling. These tend to be the highest participated calls we do, and for good reason, and I think they're high value. And actually, now thinking about it, we should make an inventory of the ones we've done so far so people can go back. I do get emails requesting to hear about Roz Quarto from ESOP's talk on nonprofit real estate agencies and their financial literacy programs for the elderly. And we just did that one with the Brighton Center that I thought was very good in Kentucky about working with employers, and I'm hoping we'll get some resources from them as well that that they're using, so that we'll have that to circulate to the groups. But there must be other kinds of innovative new programs out there that you're doing, and if you'd like some national recognition, and we'll be happy to feature them on the show, and we do mention them when we do funding proposals and stuff like that, so you'll get the word out in different places as examples of the kind of things that we do, and we're glad to kind of spread the word. So that's a pitch. A second pitch actually is we are going to do something on collaborative efforts. So the idea here is that we work on state level. So I'm not saying NHRC will work in the state level. We have nowhere that capacity, but encouraging state collaborative efforts, such as what's happening in New York, and there's successful ones in Florida and Maryland and Illinois, and I'm sure I'm leaving out many good ones, but and there's ones that are doing good work but struggling, and we get that. What we'd like to do is try to push up the learnings of what's been working well, particularly in the New York one right now, and so and the idea is there are financial resources that aren't federal resources that we should figure out how to tap into. So that could be state housing finance agencies, that could be state legislatures, that could be state programs, that collaborators have the opportunities to do these kind of relationships, as well as doing training and building support among the housing counseling community. And while you can certainly acknowledge that there's competitive relationships, in fact, when we work together, we can increase the pool of available funding. So this is a pitch, and the pitch is, let us know about if you've got innovations in housing counseling available, and do you have the opportunities to do, are you interested in collaborative work in your state? And many states already have got things going on, and we'd love to help let it grow, if that helps. But I know not everybody has everything going on, and that's part of what we're trying to improve on. So, and we're going to tap onto Ellie's experience in New York as well as on part of these discussions. So, shaping the post-HAMP world, and the Ellie, are you still with us on the line? Nope. Okay, so I didn't communicate on that well.
I'm here.
Oh, you are? Okay, good.
I'm here. So, I was muted, but I'm here.
Okay. Well, I didn't prep you on this, but if I thought I would just speak to you on the post-HAMP world is shaping up, and we're kind of struggling how to fit housing counseling into it. Do you want to say anything about sort of what the conversation looks like with the MBA right now, and what we're trying to shape?
Sure. So, the good news is that it seems like we've been able to move more towards what I should say is move away from a streamline, quote unquote, streamline one mod solution, and that it seems that at least the Mortgage Bankers Association is interested in considering a more tiered type approach, as we've kind of discussed and tried to advocate for, that there be, if you're in this position where you're just newly late, then this is what your options are, and if you're later than just 90 days, here are some other options. But to offer people kind of a tiered situation where certain documentation is given, limited documentation, and you can potentially get some kind of payment reduction based on a change in your interest rate and possibly principal forbearance and/or forgiveness, depending on the investor. So without getting into too many details about that, it does look like at least we're getting some movement in away from just this kind of across-the-board one-mod type presentation. What we're also really trying to work on is getting Mortgage Bankers Association and other folks to really look at what the importance of considering the debt-to-income ratio, because that's kind of not been in the play. It's been like a straight across the board, 20 to 30% payment reduction regardless of income. It's just a 20 to 30% payment reduction. And again, it does seem that the Mortgage Bankers Association is willing to look at that, and so hopefully we'll be able to speak more with them about that and get a little bit more movement towards our desire, which is to really allow for deep modifications for folks who have significant income loss. And then in the process of trying to really get housing counseling integrated and for servicers to really see housing counselors as partners in this process, that the Mortgage Bankers Association in their proposal made it clear that it's really difficult to get in contact with homeowners, particularly in that first 90 days. A lot of times they won't respond, they won't reach out on their own, and they won't respond to outreach made by the servicer. And so they're trying to develop this process to be incentive-based, where if you call in or you respond to outreach in the first 90 days, you can get a better offer than if you wait and it's past 90 days and then a foreclosure is filed, and that's when you respond. And so, one of the arguments that I think is to be made at that point is, if you're having trouble getting in contact with somebody who is less than 90 days late because they won't respond to your outreach and they haven't outreached to you themselves, that's a perfect place to partner with housing counselors. And this has kind of been an ongoing mantra of Bruce and Matthew all along, to really integrate housing counseling into the process. So it was it's a little, it was a little hopeful today, the conversation about what the MBA is offering, and more to come on that, because we're going to, I guess we're going to try to set up a meeting with them to talk more, but it seems like there's indications that they're willing to listen.
So we'll see where all that goes. There is a heavy tendency towards this more simplified model here, and as and the worry is that they, while they've kind of included a little bit more affordability, the question is, can they go deep enough to meet people's needs? And there's a kind of resistance to collecting income documentation after 3 months of delinquency after 90 days. And, I think there's a lot of work that needs to get done here that to see if there's a middle ground, or if we should just stick with income-based as a model. But we will make it. We will be able to get you get more. We'll learn more about it as we go along. The other thing about this that would be very helpful right now, and some of you have already weighed in on this, is about we've gotten a request that originally came from Fannie, but FHFA has really embraced it as well, to find out what works in borrower solicitation in terms of the writing of the letters that go out to borrowers in loss mitigation situations. And so there's a lot of awareness that most of the letters are really lousy, and that when you make, for example, a mod offer, sometimes you have to go through several pages of legal text to even find out what the offer is, and many people don't make it through. But the question was, are there some really good ones out there? And can we get examples of that then with personally identifiable information removed? Are there some suggestions? Some of you have given us some very thoughtful things about all this, and I'm about to turn it in, but we can always turn more in as well. It's been, I think it's helpful to show housing counseling as being kind of responsive and showing leadership on these issues when discussing with FHFA. We'll send in everything with your name and your organizational information on it, so that you can get some recognition as being the ones contributing it. But if there's more to, if anybody who hasn't submitted yet has got some thoughts about that, please get them to me now. We're about to send in the first package of materials. Good. I take it there's no comments on HAMP World. Let's go to student loans, actually. So hot topic. Thank you so much, everybody. I mean, I have no idea whether this is something that was going to fit into people's program or not, given that there wasn't a lot of detail here. And as we all know, we got a flood of comments on the leaders list about this. So just to repeat, if please don't hit reply all unless you've got a really substantive thing to say. Certainly, if you want to volunteer for a program, something like that, just send it to me or send it to Matthew, whoever initiated the email. I can sort by the title, and I will find everybody and track them as groups expressing interest. I think it's helpful for people to know informational things, but definitely we really only want the kind of high-level, high-content things to be going to the group as a whole, and not the pieces where people are volunteering to do stuff. That's I think the most helpful. And we actually didn't get very many cancellations this time around, but we do sometimes get some cancellations, and it's fine. I love to see all the stuff. If it's too much for you, there is the headlines one, where you only get what we send out, what Matthew and I send out, and there's no ability to do the rest. So on the remainder of the conversation here, so here's a big question: is sort of how would this work? And it looks like many of you feel like we can fit it into our current delinquency work. Many of you are doing student loan counseling already. Some of you have dedicated counselors who are doing that exclusively, and others fit it into their credit work. And so we could simply say, we're ready to stand up and do it. And obviously there's not President Hillary is not in place yet. There's a lot more to happen, but the idea is to try to think about how to get fit into the plan, so that in the first 100 days when something happens, we're a piece of that. I think a few people raised the very poignant question, and one which jumped out at me as well, which is how do you pay for it? Though I think some people have a funding model already. It would be great if there was a way to pay for it. I don't know what the administration, what the Hillary people were thinking was on that. I'll try to ask some questions. But this is kind of a wide open door, and it's great to see that there's a lot of excitement, enthusiasm, and local capacity to provide these services. And local in the sense both that there were groups that are physically located in many places around the country, and lots of telephone counseling-based capacity as well. So both sets of opportunities are out there, and that's very, very helpful. I don't know, has anybody got any more thoughts to add to this? Has anybody posted on this, Matthew?
Laura Buxbaum from CEI just kind of made the comment that they're doing student loan debt counseling, but they're very interested in finding ways to pay for it. She also said that they think it fits into financial capability. and that's something that NeighborWorks has been supporting, and she thinks that they'll increase their support for.
Good. Okay, that sounds good. So, and if Ellie, if you have anything to add to it, let me know as well. So let's see. The next topic on our list is, and so this will be an ongoing conversation, and we'll keep you in the loop as these pieces evolve.
Someone else added that NFCC is doing a big push on student loan debt counseling as well.
Oh yeah, no, right. It's they have a whole program, and I think a certification program as well. And I think there's going to be several training programs that come out in the short term. We'll do one more round at least of the of our webinars. I think we're planning for doing it in September, though we're happy to have others do it as the capacity grows. It's not our mission in the world to be a training organization, but really just to fill in the gaps. We do have a commitment to do at least one more round of the webinars we do, but I'm sure there's lots of great value in the programs others are doing as well out there. So that's great, and hopefully we can make this more into a financially sustainable model for groups. So here's an area where we have not made as much progress, and I'm a little interested in getting people's sensibility here. So last week I asked about whether there were issues around working with people with disabilities, and there seem to be very little resources. There's a group called Moving On in Wisconsin who clearly has a pretty robust program. But pretty much didn't get a great deal of response besides that. And I do remember in my housing counseling days how this was not, a majority of our business, but, a small but important part of our business. And that we were really kind of trying to figure it out as we were going along. That's people, of course, with disabilities, and this pops up in different contexts when we do our language access conversations with regulators. Some of you have brought up that people who are deaf have similar sets of issues and need accommodations. There's a variety of things, those kinds of issues come up in a range of issues. But to be honest, I didn't get a lot of response. Got a few people saying they'd be interested in a task force, but not very many. So I thought I'd just check in here and see if this is not really a pressing issue and we should put our resources elsewhere, or if there's some interest. So please let me know. It came up in the conversation with a lender who, with Chase and Rodney Hood, and Rodney does the relationships with organizations that deal with the blind and with the deaf, among his many other hats that he wears, and was very interested in this and asking about resources. So I wanted to, and I did pass on, moving on to Rodney, but I'll do others as well. But wanted to just see if there was more out there. So if anybody. Matthew, did we get some response here?
No, we haven't.
Okay, all right. So, maybe it's not the right time for this, and we may bring it up another time as well. Well, good. So I think we've covered a lot of ground. I would like to make kind of a frank and sincere encourage people to join NHRC. We are making lots of things happen, and there's a lot more we could do. I really hope that we can put a lot of our efforts in the next year into positioning home ownership through housing counseling as a major administrative program of the future president. We will do a lot of work around trying to think through about sustainability, to try to take advantages around emerging issues like the student loan issue. We will do some work to help build and get collaboratives on the local level to help strengthen the infrastructure and hopefully the funding sources for groups around the country. though we're pretty limited in our ability to do that unless we raise some more money for a staff person who could devote more time to that. We'll certainly always do something, but we need to raise more money to really have a more robust scene there, but we'll certainly do something. You know, there's a lot we can do, and we are a thriving industry and a creative industry. Excuse me, we're going to use the term community. We're a thriving community and creative community, but we are a community also under some stress and definitely understand under financial pressure. This year will probably be a very probably next year will probably be a very difficult year for housing counseling groups. But we will be on the forefront of all these issues, and we'll really try to to both promote housing counseling and to promote and to create opportunities for housing counseling, and make housing counseling more instrumental in the processes of both homeownership, loss mitigation, and then hopefully in other business lines as well. So some of that will depend on us getting more groups to join NHRC, and we actually have a pretty good renewal rate, so I think that looks very good. But we need to grow just like everybody else. So hopefully you can think seriously about becoming a member. And one thing that, a couple things that are membership benefits. One is that you can get the foundation guide, which is by far the largest directory for foundations and allow you to identify funding sources. We also have a discount on directors and officers insurance, which hopefully some of you have gotten quotes on, and please let me know if they save you money. The little bit I've heard is that they can save a lot of money to groups, but I'd love to know more. It's through Hanover Insurance, which is a A-level excellent insurance company. This the insurance coverages are all the kinds of things you expect for D&O, and but my understanding is that they're providing substantial savings, and that it's been a good deal for those that have reached out. So if you're a member of NHRC and interested in it, just shoot me a note. I'll be happy to send you the application materials. It's not really a heavy lift, and give you some good opportunities. And then, so with that note, oh yes, actually one more thing you should know, which is we are going to not follow our usual schedule. We have a conflict. The NCLR Housing Counselor meeting is on the third Thursday of this month, so we're going to push back the next call to the fourth Thursday, the 28th. So we're going to push back for just a week, and we'll be back on our regular schedule in August, and hopefully there'll be much more to report on all of these initiatives. So big thanks to all the good work that you guys do. Big thanks to all the people that participated in the White House meeting. You know, that was actually quite a great event, and both a lot of fun and a lot that we learned from it. Thanks to Ellie for joining us here, and thanks to everybody for their participation. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.